All right, let's take a look at the latest in the saga that is language in Quebec. Well, new regulations, some draft regulations were published in January, and these new rules could cost Quebecers, consumers, a pretty penny on things like appliances, even on things like cleaning supplies. Many are saying the new regulations are not economically feasible for big or small companies to follow, and that could see some of our favorite brands driven from the province. With more on this, let's go to Eliane Ellbogen, a lawyer and trademark agent at Fasken Montreal. Eliane, welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning.
First things first, how's it working with David Hertel? He's on here. He's a Fasken guy. Fun times,
He
right?
is. I do run into him in the hallway from time to time.
Awesome. Okay, let's get to the topic of the day here, right? And our listeners are freaking out over this, right? Because we are thinking about the appliances that we buy, the stove that we buy, and it's got to bake and roast and broil and all these English words. These draft regulations, what do they really say when it comes to appliances and other items that are purchased in stores?
Right. So what the draft regulation is saying is that on any product, so essentially consumer goods that are sold in Quebec, where there are product inscriptions that are permanently engraved or riveted or welded to the product, any inscription that is necessary for the use of the product will also have to be translated into French. The prior regulation allowed for an exception for any, permanent product inscriptions, except for those that concern the safety of the product. So basically that exception has been restricted. And so any inscription that's necessary for the use of the product, which could essentially mean all product inscriptions, will have to appear in French.
Okay, so I guess where this leads me is, I got a microwave in December. Okay, I bought a new microwave. It came with French stickers, right? And they were metallic, like high-end stickers to put over the English if you wanted that, right? Does that count under these regulations? If they provide the stickers in the box, is that good enough?
So the regulation isn't clear on that point.
Oh.
And our interpretation of how it's currently worded is that a sticker would not be sufficient because the general rule would apply, meaning that the French translation would have to be presented in equal conditions to any other language. Now, the government is coming out and saying that stickers would be sufficient. For the time being, the wording of the regulation wouldn't indicate that would be allowed.
Okay, so there seems to be a difference, and this has happened before with Bill 96, where what the government says and what is written in the law is different here, because that is a big thing, right? Like, I would imagine once it has to be part of the product and it can't just be fixed with a sticker. Now you have to change production lines. Now you have to make a separate run just for Quebec. And that changes the economics of everything. Is that the concern you are hearing from companies?
That's exactly it. Yeah, what we're hearing is that it will be commercially unviable to comply with this requirement because, as you say, you're going to have to create an entirely separate supply chain to distribute into the Quebec market.
So at the end of the day, you still have a market of, we're up to 9 million, I think, in Quebec. So you're still at a market of 9 million people who need appliances. Whatever draconian law or regulation you put in, people still need appliances. How does it play out, right? Because I would imagine somebody's going to say, okay, fine, let's jack up the price. Like, how do you think it plays out if they go through with it?
Well, this can play out in a couple ways. The most drastic effect is that major product manufacturers will potentially leave the Quebec market. And so what we're hearing is that there could be up to 90% of, for example, home appliances that won't be available in Quebec anymore. And of course, this could apply to all types of consumer goods. So that's one way that this could play out, which is really the worst case scenario. And then the other way is that, the cost of consumer goods will go up in Quebec.
I got a question from a listener. I think I know the answer, but I want confirmation here. Cars, right? What about cars, vehicles, right? You turn on a car and all the little warning bells, it says park and brake and that kind of thing. Well, what
Yep.
happens with cars?
This applies to cars as well. We may not feel the impact as directly in the automotive industry because cars are increasingly relying on software.
Ah.
But it's interesting to note that in the draft regulation, there are now increased requirements for embedded software. So this will be felt in the automotive industry as well, but maybe not to the same extent.
But that really is a game changer, and I was mistaken because I was under the assumption that cars would be left out of this. They're all
Nope.
It's not.
Any
Whoa.
product that is made available or sold in Quebec will be subject to the draft regulation.
Okay.
Or to the regulation
Yeah.
once it's published.
And of course, I've got one of those cars where everything's a screen now, right? So I guess that's moot when you just are able to change the language so easily on products like that. But then let's go from $50,000 vehicles to $2 spray bottle. Okay, and I used a spray bottle yesterday, and I looked at the nozzle, and embossed in the plastic is the word spray. That can't be on a shelf if these draft regulations go through?
That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay.
No, I mean, it really is. It's very wide-reaching. It applies to all consumer goods, $2 spray bottles, $2,000 dishwashers. And when we're talking about home appliances, these are essential goods like a refrigerator, a stove, a dishwasher. All households require these goods. So to just assume that the increased cost and complexity of having to comply with the regulation will be passed down to the Quebec consumer is essentially unfair.
The key word here is a draft, right? Draft regulations. I hear draft. I in my head I think, okay, not set in stone. Maybe they can change the language, especially on the sticker front. So what can you tell us on that? Just how much of a draft is this? Or give us a timeline on when these rules could become the law of the land.
So typically when we're at the stage of issuing draft regulations, we're pretty close to the final wording. That being said, the draft regulation was open to comments, public comments, which ended on Monday. So there is still hope that the regulation will be amended and perhaps that restriction will be removed or clarified. But at this point, we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 3 months to a year before the final regulation is adopted.
We're with Eliane Ellbogen, a lawyer and trademark agent at Fasken, and we're talking about draft regulations being proposed by the Quebec government that deal with the language of things you buy, from appliances to spray bottles. Eliane, you're a lawyer and you look at this kind of thing. Is there any comparables around the world, right? Because I am hearing from people who are saying, hey, this is fine. Other countries have the same type of thing, the same types of things. You go to other countries, they'll have it in other languages. Give me the comparables here, and if there really is a comparison to be made.
So from what I'm hearing, the proposed regulation in Quebec is very different from in other jurisdictions. If you take France, for example, there is similar legislation where product packaging and labels have to be made available in French in France. However, we don't have those same requirements to translate permanent product inscriptions like those that are welded or embossed on a product. Those can appear in another language without a French translation.
And what do you think? We talked about consumers a lot. But, I think about businesses, the products that you'll find when you go into the bathroom at a business, right? And it says push or it says press for hot air for your hand dryer and that kind of thing. Was that already a rule in this province in commercial enterprises, or is that also changing here?
That's a good question. So Bill 96 expanded the scope of the product inscription requirements. And so now a consumer under the French language charter includes the concept of B2B. So it's not just end consumers, but also businesses that are doing business with other entities are also subject to the legislation.
Eliane, when it comes to an appliance maker or other big company that sells products in this province, do you have any knowledge of a company that is ready to say, that's it, we're going to leave Quebec and make an announcement on that front if this were to go through?
We do have some indications that certain home appliance manufacturers, what they're saying is that it'll essentially be impossible to comply with the regulation if it's adopted as is, and that they may have no other choice but to leave the Quebec market, at least for certain lines of product.
Eliane, listen, thanks for answering our questions and providing some insight into this. We have a lot of interest in the subject. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Eliane Ellbogen is a lawyer and trademark agent at Fasken